Hello everyone, welcome to Be the Good. My name is Pia Ranada, Rappler's Head of Community, and you are watching another episode of Be the Good, Let's Talk Liveability. So, for those who are familiar with the show, we have a spin-off of Be the Good, which is our community show all about livability in Philippine cities, improving quality of life in Philippine cities. And for this episode, I'm really excited because we have a very, very specific topic today and something we haven't discussed in previous episodes, all about startups and how we can make Philippine cities startup cities, diba? Friendly and conducive to new enterprises and to innovation. And to talk about this initiative, to talk about this topic, we have with us Kubo Innovation Executive Director Jay Fajardo. Welcome, Jay, to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so for context, just to also let our viewers know why we've invited Jay, because we want to talk about a initiative, a government and private sector initiative called Scale NCR. And I'm going to read the whole name because it's quite a mouthful, but I think it's important to really understand what this is about. It's the Strategic and Collaborative Alliance for Leveraging Ecosystems of Startups, National Capital Region. So this is a government and private sector initiative to improve the ranking of Philippine cities, especially Metro Manila, in terms of how attractive they are to startups and innovation. And Kubo Innovation was one of those groups that founded this initiative, and that's why we've invited Jay to talk to us more about this Scale NCR. So, siguro for very, very simple, kind of going back to the basics, when we discuss, what's a startup city and, what does it mean for a city to be friendly and conducive to startups, we first want to define and understand what is a startup, how does this initiative define a startup?
Okay, well, the general definition for startups pretty much revolves around speed and scale. You differentiate startups from a regular SME by measuring the ability to grow from, let's say, 1 to 100,000 customers in a very short span of time. Hyperscaling, so to speak. So, because a lot of people ask that question, am I a startup if I'm an SME? In reality, the ability to scale from the small, minuscule customer base to about 100,000 users is enabled by technology. So it's usually a software platform built around it, or maybe an app, and then it reaches a wide audience right away.
So it's not number of employees; you're scaling the number of users.
It's the scalability. The hyper-scalability. That's what...
But of users, not of employees, diba?
Of users, yeah. Employees just happen to be a byproduct. Because once you scale that to that size, you need the employees to support that growth. Okay,
so I think the next element or the next logical question to that, given our topic, is if that is the definition of the government initiative for startups, what would be kind of elements for you of what an environment would be that would be conducive to growing startups? Like, what would make a city or a region attractive to startups?
Okay, the basic component or variable would be the academic institutions. Even in startup ecosystems around the world, the ability to prosper and thrive is really based on the supply of human resource. And these are the students. These are the ones that create ideas. And universities are typically healthy environments for these ideas to thrive and to be exchanged and to be built into actual products. Just like in Silicon Valley, for example, there's Stanford. It's in the Stanford area. NCR has a lot of universities. It's very important for us to recognize that this is the source for supply of ideas and products and projects. Beyond that, obviously, is maybe ability to set up a business easily and with very low friction and with very high speed. So those are the two basic components, I think, that are easily addressable by both what exists, the university system, networks of schools, and the government, by by supporting the municipal permits, the different types of registrations you have to go through to create the business.
Okay, so Kubo Innovation is a startup accelerator, and so we want also to understand, like, for you, when you assess Metro Manila now, so you mentioned presence of schools, you mentioned the need to speed up mga business permits, business applications. Where would you say Metro Manila is in terms of conducive or friendliness to startups? You mentioned, I've read articles mentioning like indices or rankings. So how would you rate, or what would be a good way to describe the Metro Manila's startup friendliness?
Well, it's very conducive to startups because of the number of universities around us. There's no lack of supply of the human resource, not just as founders, but also as talent like engineers, people that will software coders, etc. So it's very high. And maybe the other side that's sort of like lagging behind is the ability to pass through government bureaucracy to set up your businesses. A lot of people talk about that it's hard to create businesses, but a lot of LGUs though are starting to create an environment within their municipalities to make it easier for founders to prosper and to register, to start and prosper. With regards to that innovation quotient or our grade vis-a-vis the rest of the world, we may be low, but sometimes it's sort of like a skewed score because a lot of the difficulties that we encounter setting up startups with regards to registration, the government, etc., drive or influence founders to register elsewhere. And when I say elsewhere, we're talking about places like Singapore, which is it's a one day process to incorporate, which is also why Singapore's innovation quotient is very high. There's so many people that are actually operating here but have registered there.
So ito na nga, no, when I look at this startup genome and then there's this parang ranking, it says Manila is 81 to 90 emerging startup ecosystem, and parang we're far, like we're top 15 or top 20 or top 30, and I think this is just Asia. So like compared to our peers, talagang we're lagging behind.
Right.
So I guess my next question would be, where does Scale NCR fit here? And maybe tell us a little bit more about how this initiative began and where does Kubo Innovation fit in the story?
Sure. It began because of that particular report. And there really was a need for us to level up our ecosystem. And so the DOST took it upon themselves to create this program and conscript the different TBIs, the technology business incubators in the universities around the NCR to help address this issue in different aspects. Capacity building, training, tapping projects themselves, and reaching out to the LGUs to make it easy for businesses to operate and register. So right now it's a very simple proposition. It's really to create the environment for founders to prosper.
So medyo low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Ayusin muna yung
Yeah.
pwedeng maayos naman.
Right. And the TBI network has existed for quite a long time already. And that was the initial, I guess, initiative that the DOSC did to create the projects and founders. And again, it's in the universities where this is happening. So it's a logical migration to break out from the university and start going into the LGUs in the surrounding environment.
Yeah. When we talk of LGU processes, yung government application process that all businesses, entrepreneurs have to go through, can you just identify which particular aspect of setting up a business and dealing with an LGU to do that? What is the most difficult, at least for the startups you've worked with?
Government, municipal permits, business permits. It may be simple steps, but it takes a while And there had been some nuances that were very odd before that we actually discovered maybe about 3 years ago. For example, one LGU had an ordinance that prevented or prohibited multiple companies in one address. It makes sense because maybe that sort of like prevents scams or fly-by-night businesses and whatever. But it already prohibits co-working spaces from prospering. Not like in other ecosystems where you have WeWork or Remote or other co-working spaces where businesses would be able to hold office or register. That was a very basic and simple barrier, which I think is being addressed already. There's that weird edge case. There's also the typical red tape that you have to go through. For example, for me to be granted a business permit, I need to have fire extinguishers, so that the Bureau of Fire can inspect and certify you that you're safe. But how does that work if you're in a co-working space? Does every startup have to buy fire extinguishers? Those things. It's not compatible with the nature or the dynamic of fast-moving startups.
Okay. I've also heard of complaints like minsan redundant hinihinging permits na parang there's one agency asking for this and it's pretty much the same thing that another government agency is asking for. Other complaints that I know to be common would be high electricity rates, traffic, customs corruption, and then you mentioned also red tape. Hindi siya centralized and streamlined, unlike Singapore, which is really kind of the gold standard. So, and in terms of traffic, all of those, the hazards of living in Metro Manila, how does that affect the friendliness of a city to startups?
Well,
and slow internet also.
Slow internet. Well, my philosophy is that everything would just improve, especially with technology. So bandwidth just improves. It's just how fast it keeps up with applications that require heavy bandwidth. But traffic is not is something we have to accept already. It's a big problem, a bigger problem. It's nice that the work dynamic nowadays is hybrid. You don't have to go to work. As long as your work only requires, or allows for remote work, you're a digital nomad. So that's fine. I mean, it's mitigated in some ways by that. But other businesses require offline activities. And it's a little bit more difficult. They just have to contend with it, with traffic. Now, power rates, power costs, again, is something, it's a macro problem. How do you solve that except for maybe a national level subsidy plan? But there are other problems more than the cost of power. It's the lack of power. We have some workers that are located in Mindanao, for example. There was a time that there was a lot of power outages, and we had to ship them, or we had to allow them to buy those power supplies. Generators. It's the new ones where you can have a USB charger, you have a plug and whatever. Just so the work continues. So it's more than just power rates. It's the power supply or distribution. So there are a lot. We're actually contending with so many factors. So far, we're surviving. It's good that you asked that, because before this afternoon, I actually called a friend of mine from Negros. He's there in Negros, and I asked him how fast does it take you to register a company? And he said, SEC is about the same, 2 weeks to a month. But municipal registration in their part of the world, in their province, is super fast because of the volume.
Onti lang.
Yeah, it's a volume issue. So now I'm imagining if you spread out across the country, it's way faster to deal with the LGUs than it is here in the NCR.
So better to found a startup in another city.
Yeah,
In a
and
way.
I'm a big advocate of that.
Right, to spread out.
To spread it out,
the growth.
and to create and nurture the innovation where they are, rather than have them come over.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things nga you mentioned was the difficulty with permits through the local government level. So how does Scale NCR address that particular problem?
Well, we actually engage with the LGUs and find out, and we do assessments. We do we map out what they actually need, needs assessment, etc. And that spans the range of government requirements, government incentives, what incentives are in place, and then all the way to the supply. They have the supply of talent. They have the places of work that people can actually go to, and then we create a report, and we actually give it to the LGU, so that they themselves have a study that they can use, so they can fill the gaps.
And what would the report say? For example, what are the metrics?
Well, that's it. For example, the speed of creating businesses. What are the? It doesn't have to be absolute numbers. It can be pretty much recommendations, like you need to encourage co-working spaces, maybe, or work closely with the universities in this area. Manila has a lot of universities. Quezon City has a lot of universities. So and maybe if you don't have universities, maybe you can create one in your area, or invite them over.
How would the startups, for example, in a specific city, benefit from that LGU partnership or collaboration?
For example, in Quezon City, they have the Startup QC initiative. So far, that's the only one that I know of that's official. That's an official LGU initiative, and they made an effort to really decide or to find out what the startups would need. So they have engagement with the local community and ask them, what do you need aside from just money? I mean, there's grants, but that's the shallowest part of the value that you can give. Then they go all the way to introducing them to the business environment. For example, in Quezon City, they'll introduce you to the chambers of commerce. They'll introduce you to the prosperous businessmen, so that your startup can actually attach yourself to an existing enterprise. And you can both prosper together. So those types of interactions.
Pero so far, QC pa lang out of the 16
So far,
cities
yes.
in one town.
Yeah, so far.
What's the timeline for this? How do we know? When do we measure success? When can startups start feeling faster business permit?
You know what?
application process?
You'll probably, well, I'm guessing, but maybe 5 years is a short period already to measure impact and effect. No one's really measuring our innovation quotient on the municipal or LGU level. Maybe we should. But it's going to take a while for you to see how things are prospering. Maybe when you start seeing news items where Quezon City is boasting of multiple startups that have made, have raised this amount of money, or have actually expanded to other markets across in the region or around the world. So those are the metrics that I probably would try to spot.
Okay. So apart from the Scale NCR component of helping LGUs become more, friendlier to startups, how else can startups directly benefit from Scale NCR?
Well, there's actually, I think they announced the last time we had get together. They're putting up an institute, a startup institute.
Which one? The UST?
Scale NCR. And any kind of that, I'd consider that an acceleration program. Any kind of an acceleration program benefits startups themselves because it's an opportunity for them to experience the pitfalls and successes of startups that you'd normally experience over maybe 12 months, 24 months, even longer, into a shorter span of time. So you learn from mistakes already very early. You don't have to waste resources and money until you make a mistake and then pivot or change your business model. So for me, any kind of acceleration program like this one is very valuable to the startups. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
Is there a resource for entrepreneurs, for example, those who are watching, di ba, meron ba silang, would you recommend a place to go to where they can start accessing some of this information?
Well, right now there's the Facebook page of the
Scale NCR Facebook page. Okay.
And then they can go to Kubo also, QBO Innovation. We actually have a community. We ask people to join so that any initiatives that we do, we invite them to attend. We invite them. We reach out to them also, because aside from our work with Scale NCR, we're also doing our own community building. We try to make efforts, some free or most free, to invite them to our space where we have what we call kulitans. No? It's a panel of experts, for example, so that people learn about different trends and issues that may affect our innovation community. For example, on the 17th, we have one on the future of work. It's called Limitless, and we have a panel of experts that are going to discuss how work has changed and where it's headed, including the impact of AI even. But remote work, impact of AI, so where we're headed. So that contributes to the IQ of the founders that we invite to our events, and we try to do this also when we go to the provinces. We've done mappings in the provinces. We've done four provinces now. Sort of like what we're doing with the LGUs. Create a report. We tell them this is what you probably need to do, and hopefully they say yes, we will do it. So that's something that I think is very valuable to the startups.
Which agency or unit in the LGUs are you talking to for this project?
For Scale NCR itself,
Scale NCR.
the OST.
In the LGUs, the
sorry.
government units.
Well, it really depends. Sometimes it's for example, in QC, it's LIPO. It's the investment office of the LGU. Most of the time, it's that type of agency. Maybe in smaller ones, it's just the general. There may be a task force that they put together, but it's really.
May mga task force. Okay. Then naman sa flip side of the hazards of having a business in Metro Manila and other Philippine cities, what would you say Metro Manila has going for itself? Like, what makes Metro Manila a good place for startups? I mean, apart from the schools here, in terms of the market, diba? Like the consumers here, what are some opportunities that new entrepreneurs can count on?
In Metro Manila? Well, I guess you're right. It's pretty obvious. It's the market, no, and the access to talent. But apart from that, I can't pinpoint one. I guess it's just the general rapid flow of the economy, where it creates a consumer flow. It's easier to sell to Metro Manila citizens than it is elsewhere because I feel like we spend more 10 times more than when we're elsewhere, di ba, in the province. So for me, that's the general thing that you can tap into. Talent, and everyone's here, unfortunately. And it's just a fact. And of course, we're also the landing point for foreign investors. So just like Singapore is the entry point for VCs in Southeast Asia, we're the entry point here in the Philippines. But that should change, I think.
Yeah. What other Philippine cities appear promising in terms of being a startup city? Like, what have you noticed? Very progressive local government units.
Cebu.
Cebu, okay.
Cebu has always been very exciting and very dynamic with regards to startup ecosystems, and that even started way back in 2013. There's a group there that's very active, and they created this regional conference called Geeks on a Beach, I think we're having it again this November, and it's a great opportunity for everyone across the country in the space to congregate and meet.
Geeks on a beach. Beach talaga.
Beach talaga. I mean, it's in this year it's in Cebu. Last year it was in Bohol.
So it moves. It's not just in Cebu, but it started in Cebu.
It started in Cebu. We've had it in Boracay. We did last year in Bohol, and then this year it's in Cebu.
Nice.
So it's super recommended because unlike conferences here in Manila, where you attend the conference and you go home.
You're immersive.
There it's immersive, almost 24/7. Because of that dynamic, there have been a lot of deal flow and investments happening because you're up close and personal with VCs and founders are just like, okay, after the conference, okay, where are you guys going to eat? Or let's go to have a couple of drinks. So a lot of deal flow happens that way. It accelerates also the deal flow because there's a phenomenon in when you're raising capital. The VCs want to create a relationship with you first, so that and then vice versa, vice versa. But in that environment, it's sort of like accelerated. So it's different. I think that's something unique that we have in the region.
But in Metro Manila, is it just as possible when traffic is so hard to get together?
No. Again, people already try not to travel. It's very prohibitive. Sometimes we have events in Quezon City, so the people in Makati can't get there. More so the people in the south, and vice versa. So it's quite difficult. The default hub is obviously BGC or Makati. It's a center, and people just go there, and just by virtue of that, it becomes the active place.
You mentioned there would be a 5-year road plan for Scale NCR. Could you give us an idea of what that roadmap would look like? What are the key things that we can expect will be there?
Well, that big one is the startup, is the institute. That's a big one.
When will that come up?
It's supposed to come out next year already.
Okay.
And that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work, because not only do you need venues or infrastructure, you need people you need content. You need content, mentors. You have experts. So that's there. And then continued work on hitting the LGUs and measuring the impact on how things are going, and then elevating it further to another level. Let's add some more. For example, incentives. Like if you're a startup, do you get tax breaks on the LGU level, or do you get, if they're rich enough, do you get cash back or rebates? Because that's been done elsewhere, just to attract.
Elsewhere in the Philippines or elsewhere
in the world?
Okay.
To attract people to set up in that place.
Have we had tax breaks for startups here?
Not really. But I heard even years back that there are incentives in the barangay level that people don't know about. And people don't know about it. And when you ask the people in the barangay, they don't know about it either.
Pero startup talaga.
It's
Not-
part of,
not
it's
MSMEs.
more, it's SMEs.
MSME.
Yeah, it's an SME. But you can tap into it. As long as you, I guess, you fill the parameters. But yeah, those I think are required. And it's really to create pockets of commerce and innovation. I mean, not keep it in Makati or keep it in BGC, but spread it out. Have it in Alabang, have it in Manila, have it in Quezon City, so Pasig. So I think that's very important.
So with this roadmap, what would be your metrics for success after 5 years? Okay, institute is put up. What's your goal for the number of days business permits have to be done?
Oh well,
being processed?
that's difficult. You can only hope to improve the time, for example.
But what's
the
acceptable?
turnaround
Like
time.
3 days? I mean,
3 days would be nice. Would be really nice.
What's your minimum
Well, I don't
goal?
know.
I don't know.
You know what? I think it's acceptable at this point to have it maybe even a week and then you're done.
Okay.
But 3 days would be great, would be perfect, so that you don't have to think about it anymore.
As opposed to the current na
Yeah, it
1
takes a
month,
while.
iba-iba.
Yeah, and then just look. When you have to, when somebody needs to inspect you for fire safety, you have to wait for them to come. So
And that depends on the LGU, how
and
much
you don't
how many
know when
people
they're
they
gonna
have.
come.
Yeah.
So that's the those are the things that you have to contend with. What else? What do you measure? The number of startups that have actually registered.
May
That's the-
registration to
yeah.
be part of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's the real validation. If the growth of startups in a certain LGU is significant, then you're doing a good job.
Registration meaning for business permits, and then you would then
Permits, and
measure.
you'd map them. I mean, you're a startup. Where's your address? You're here in this area.
Okay, and what would is there like a minimum number of startups you hope will be
Not really
registered?
No. Here's the thing.
Or change in ranking in the index?
Well, yes, but that's global. That's a little macro.
Okay.
And you're hoping that it will trickle upwards or go upwards. There's a metric that there are about 100 startups incubated in an LGU, for example. But we really have to map that. And surprisingly, it's very difficult to map because there's so many mapping initiatives happening.
Yeah, how do you
Overlap.
centralize it all?
Yeah. So how do you centralize that? Some are mapping on the regional level, on the provincial level. Some are mapping on the LGU level. So you have to make sense of all that.
And would the public be able to access the map that
We hope
NCR
hope that we can have a database that should be publicly accessible. Like for example, Startup Genome. That's a private initiative though. And it really, one of the things we have to do is to encourage people also to register. Our big problem also is that, when you're a startup, you die fast if you're bad. The cycle. If you're gonna fail, startups fail. There's a high rate of failure also, and then that's it. You don't know what happened to them. So you register here as a startup. You started a business, and then when they disappear, they just fade away. So you need to figure out whether or not you have to strike them off the database, and there's no easy way to do that because they just create a new startup.
Yeah.
So you're not going to go after them and say, "What was your original startup?" and then you. That's tricky.
Okay. So, we're gonna wrap up the interview soon, but siguro last few questions na lang from my end would be, Kubo Innovation, why did you decide to be part of this, and what would be your goal for this? What is your vision for Kubo, especially in NCR Scale, Scale NCR?
Well, Kubo, when we put it up, was really envisioned to create that environment for innovation, for startups across the country. And we've done this through all sorts of programs that does creation of founders, all the way from creation of founders to nurturing them to helping them prosper. Those are the three cycles or stages that we provide. That's why it made so much sense for us to be part of this. And when we started out, we were really connected with DOST and DTI.
Because
For
you
that,
can explain the origin.
for that purpose, because when we were created, that was around the time when startups were becoming popular. The startups were only started to emerge. The Philippine startup ecosystem, as it is now, so only started to emerge around 2011, 2012, and the government was starting to take notice. And then after a while, okay, let's start planning. Let's get involved. Let's see how we can support, how we can help, and that resulted in Kubo Innovation, which is a public-private partnership. So it's us and them.
The private funder of Kubo is?
It's Idea Space, which is a Metro Pacific MVP investment firm, and at that time, JP Morgan. And then the government.
Okay. So yeah, my last question, Jay, would be, it's something really, parang, kasi part of the reason why we wanted to have this episode is really to give also concrete tips for new entrepreneurs, young people especially, diba, who aspire to be innovators and you want to contribute also to the economy, because yun nga, part of making a city more livable is urban prosperity for all. It has to be inclusive, kailangan felt by all, not just the super rich, diba? Dapat inclusive yung economic growth. And startups could be one way where we, really nurture businesses that employ a lot of Filipinos, that, cultivate talent. So what would be your advice to startup founders, entrepreneurs watching the show, struggling to make it? I mean, especially in Metro Manila and even other Philippine cities. What would be your advice to them? And maybe what are your words for them on their journey, especially because they now aspire to contribute to the economy?
Okay. Startups or startup founders here in the Philippines particularly have a pretty good environment to prosper. We've got a big population. We've got English-speaking population, so you don't have to localize apps, etc. You have a very young population. Average age is about 25, 26. High digital penetration,
Sure.
high device penetration. Everything is going for it. If it's a digital economy. So my advice is really to recognize that and to start already now. Don't overthink your product. Try to let it hit the market as fast as possible to validate it and try to reach product market fit. That's the formula for trying to increase success for a startup. That's one. Now, for the ones that are struggling already, that have made that leap, it's really to be as resilient as possible. We are in a sort of like what we call a VC winter. It's a funding winter and close to recession and inflation is high.
Yeah.
So if you're still alive now as a startup, that means you're resilient and you're in a good place. That means you've proven your mettle and you've been able to create a business model and have somebody open their wallets and pay for your service. So you're in a pretty good place. So be resilient and continue with the effort. But in addition to that, I know that this generation of startup founders have a very passionate concern for the environment, for circular economy, etc.
Right. Yeah.
So if you're a startup founder, you've already made that initial step to pull away from the normal. So you're no longer normal. You've got this superpower and this ambition, this drive to change the world. That's what entrepreneurs do. And since you've got that already, and you have all these issues around us, then you have that energy and that drive to help solve this and make our city more livable.
Okay, those are all my questions. But Jay, maybe you have final words.
Final words?
Or even questions, anything you'd like to say?
Not really. Well, again, I was trying to paint the picture of a very optimistic future for not just the world, but for the Philippines itself, within the region. Because we've always been in the ground floor, just like how we've always been in the economy. So if you build your startup today, or you build your business today, the opportunity for you to prosper is super high because there's nowhere else to go but up. And the projections are very clear. I mean, we've got a pretty good growth. We also we measured the Philippine digital economy to be $6.4 billion now, and it's projected to grow to about 35 billion in the next 2 years. So that's the backdrop of where you can now operate as an entrepreneur.
Right. And that's the opportunity we have to seize.
Yeah, seize it now.
It's not a given. It's something we have to work for.
Right. And it's supposed to be easy in our environment. I mean, we were spending, and we're young. So.
Okay, with that optimistic note, we would like to thank our viewers for watching this show. And of course, the conversation does not stop here because we have chat rooms in our Rappler Communities app where you can share your thoughts about this episode, ask questions that maybe we could also relate to Jay after this episode. So if you want to weigh in, you can always go to the Livable Cities or Money chat room that's in the Rappler Communities app. Our app is free to download and gets you unlimited access to our stories and access to our reporters, our experts, and our civic engagement specialists. So please do download the app and engage with us some more there. And we're again very, very happy to have Jay in our show, and we hope that this kind of spreads the word about this initiative, and anything that could help innovators and our economy prosper is something we're all aligned on. So once again, thank you, Jay, for being part of this episode. I'm Pia Ranada, Rappler's Head of Community. Thanks again for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.